All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'll just make a couple of announcements first. Thanks to the Clarksburg Schoolhouse for having us here today. We're going to have Michael Campbell come up and talk a little bit about the history of the house. And for our council members, due to the beautiful acoustics of the room, we don't want to have to turn up the volume of our microphones too high. So please, I'm totally 2 inches away from the mic. So speak very close to the microphone so we don't have to jack the sound up. So it is 9:33 on Thursday, April 24th. Welcome to the Delta Stewardship Council meeting. My name is Julie Lee, and I'm the chair of the council. I'm going to have Emma lead us in our roll call now. Sorry, you're going to talk about the public participation part, and then we'll have roll call. Thanks, Emma.
That sounds great. If any member of the public is interested in providing public comment on any agenda item during today's meeting, please send an email blue card to engage@deltacouncil.ca.gov. Be sure to note your name and the agenda item you wish to speak on. When called, the clerk will unmute you. All right, we'll start with our in-person council members. Councilmember Burgess.
Here.
Councilmember Damrell. Councilmember Weso. Councilmember Maranian. Chair Lee.
Here.
All right, and now we'll move to our remote council members. Please disclose if there are other individuals over the age of 18 with you and a brief description of their relationship to you. Additionally, please remain on camera for the duration of this meeting if possible. Councilmember Zingali.
Here.
And are there any other adults in the room with you?
There are not.
Great, thank you. And I want to note that Councilmember Miller will be joining us later.
All right, we'll make an announcement when she joins us. Thanks, Emma. Next, I'd like to invite up Mike Campbell to share a few words about the schoolhouse.
I'm Mike Campbell, and I'm a longtime resident, born and raised in Clarksburg. It's great to have you here. We've had support from the Stewardship Council to make this possible, so I want to acknowledge that now. This building was built in 1883. It was the third school in Clarksburg. It was built about half a mile from here, up against the levee. When the levee was raised in the early 1900s, the school was moved back about 200 feet, put on 8-foot stilts. It was never segregated school, unique to the Delta. If you look at some of the photographs of the student body, it was very diverse. A lot of Japanese students, a lot of Portuguese students, Dutch. We took this on, the community took this on 11 years ago. We were given the schoolhouse if we would move it and start a nonprofit. So that's what we've done. This has been one of those exercises where if you knew how hard it was going to be, you might consider not doing it, but we never went there. We've had a great time. Our board has been very loyal. We have 15 members on our board from across the community. We have, when we count up the number of years our board's families have been in the community, it's well over 1,200 years. So it's very well represented, very diverse board. We started raising money and looking for a site. This site is about 1.5 acres. It's the very best site in the community, downtown Clarksburg, beautiful oak trees. A home builder, building mover from Benicia moved the building to this site. The community raised in cash and in kind about $800,000 to put a deposit down on the site and to build a foundation, move the building, build the walls and permits. We were fortunate to be shovel-ready when the Delta Conservancy grants came out, the Prop 68 grants came out. We received two. One was to finish purchasing the site, and the other was to renovate the building. This building looked nothing like it does now. We made the decision not to go for historic status because we wanted it to last forever. So high efficiency doors, windows, insulation, air conditioning, heating. The floor came from an old barn, Doug fir floor came from an old barn that was milled specifically for this building. When it was raised, had to be raised up 12 feet. We raised it 13 feet so we could build a bridge from the parking lot directly into the building. That allowed us to have handicap access to the building. All told, we've raised probably $3 million for this project that you see now. Our next steps are to build a 1,300 square foot deck off the south side, right behind the French doors, and to landscape what we're calling Heritage Park. We're working with the Wilton Rancheria tribe. And we'll have an example of a family's living unit on the grounds. The Japanese community had a school outside of the community, a culture and language school that they built. When Pearl Harbor was bombed, we had over 100 Japanese families in the area, and they all disappeared. Only about 25 came back. We very much want to tell that story. It's a very important story. A lot of people don't even know that happened. So it certainly had an impact, still has an impact on our community. The flagpole that you see on this side, we finished putting up. It's an Eagle Scout project. We finished putting it up at 8 o'clock last night. So a huge amount of volunteer hours. I would say we have over 20,000 volunteer hours in this project so far, and counting. The next step would be exhibits that we're working on, exhibits both inside and outside the building, and as I said, the landscaping and the deck. It's just great to have you here. This is a real success for us to have you here, to have you involved. Jessica was involved right at the very beginning, helping us. So with planning money, what are you going to be when you grow up? So here we are. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, really a success story. We held our DPIIC meeting here earlier this month. Amanda's going to come up and talk to us about that in a few minutes. And we got great feedback about it. We love this venue. And so thanks for all the hard work that went into it. We really appreciate it. And I love coming down here. I think that the council is definitely going to keep this on our list of places where we want to have meetings in the future. It's a wonderful venue. Yep. All right. So we'll move on to our next agenda item, public comment. This item is for the public to comment on any topic that is not on the council's agenda today. Any comments on items on the agenda will be taken during that item. Are there any public comments, Emma?
No, Madam Chair, there are not.
All right, thank you.
No comments in
Next.
Eureka either.
Thanks, Dan. Our next item is the consent calendar. We have one item, the adoption of the March 27th, 2025 meeting summary. Before we vote on that, are there any public comments on the items on the consent calendar?
None in Clarksburg. Councilmember Zingali?
No, none here.
No
All
public
right,
comment.
I will entertain a motion to approve these items. All right, move for approval. And second from Councilmember Burgess, and we will proceed with the roll call vote. Emma?
Councilmember Burgess?
Yes.
Burgess, aye. Councilmember Damrell. Damrell, aye. Councilmember Waso. Waso, aye. Councilmember Moranian. Moranian, aye. Councilmember Zingali.
Aye.
Zingali, aye. Chair Lee.
Aye.
Chair Lee, aye. The motion passes.
All right, thank you. Next agenda item is the chair's report. We've continued with our meet and greets. I don't have a lot to report back on those, but it's great to meet with our legislators and talk to them about what the council's all about and how our appeals process works and answer their questions and talk to them about their constituent concerns in the Delta. I attended the National Heritage Area Advisory Committee meeting yesterday. We had a couple of things of interest to folks. And just to remind people, the final plan for the National Heritage Area was approved by Congress in January, and then the DPC approved that plan at its March meeting. They are getting ready to enter into a tourism and marketing contract to help spread the word about the National Heritage Area. And they are also forming a couple of ad hoc groups. One is about water tours that they would like to start working on, having more water tours available in the Delta. And another one was to work on the coordination with the America 2050 in California 175 commemorative anniversaries. They want to kind of work together with those two entities to promote the National Heritage Area. And I don't know if you have anything further about that you want to mention.
No, I think the report out. We haven't had our DPC meeting since we've had a meeting.
Yesterday.
Yeah. So and then you were able to attend the NHA meeting. I wasn't. We have the California State Association of Counties meeting in Sacramento this week. So but yeah, at the Delta Protection Commission, we did approve the partnership program and memorandum. And then we also had a presentation on the socioeconomic indicators report. And I think I reported that out last time.
Great. The passport program, I think they're wanting to get that kicked off in the next few months. So that's kind of a program where folks can get a passport and they go to all the different national heritage areas and they get it stamped like you would if you went to a foreign country. And so they're looking at different places in the Delta that might want to help host that and partner with them. That'd be fun.
Yeah, and there's a lot of libraries that are, and people are like, libraries, you can go to a library anywhere, but it's a good kind of base. The other interesting part of the NHA activities is that there's a push to make sure that there's enough funding for our NHAs.
Yeah.
Particularly since our Delta NHA became, our plan got approved. It would normally qualify us for more money. However, that has to be approved. And because some of the folks are a little concerned about the emphasis on diversity and equity and celebrating cultural things, there's a little bit of fear that it won't be. So there's been an effort among the Delta counties and the NHA, or the NHA advisory to really strengthen the resolve of all of our elected officials to help push that kind of small amount of budget on the federal level. So
Thanks, Diane. Do any other members have any updates that they want to share on anything? No, not today. Okay. Well, I'll invite Amanda up to talk about our Delta Plan Interagency Implementation Committee recap. Amanda Bowl is our Special Assistant for Planning and Science, and with her is Audrey Cho, our Executive Fellow.
Great. Thank you, Chair Lee, and good morning, council members. Audrey and I are here to just give you a recap from the April 3rd DPIIC meeting, and then also just let you know kind of what's on deck for the rest of the year for DPIIC. So I'll hand it over to Audrey first.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda, and good morning, council members. So to kick off our meeting on April 3rd, just like today, we had a representative from the schoolhouse to provide insight into the restoration of the space. And then we dove pretty quickly into a discussion on Proposition 4, the Safe Drinking Water, Wildfire Protection, Drought Preparedness, and Clean Air Bond Act of 2024. members as well as guests from the Wildlife Conservation Board and California State Parks discussed plans for rollout of agency funds and particularly highlighted the need for more funding in the Delta region. The bond currently allocates $179 million specifically to Delta programs and projects, while it needs much more for restoration, levee improvements, and overall climate resilience. We then heard briefly from state park staff about their process to classify the Delta Meadows Park property as a new state park before heading out to our site visit. Next slide, please. Site visits first began at the Delta Meadows Park property, and our representative Megan Harrison was our tour guide. She led us from the main entrance, which you can see in the top photo right there, to what was once a boat launch area. And then we caught really beautiful weather. We were pretty lucky, worried that it was going to rain, but discussed the natural and cultural resources that that site has to offer to Delta residents and visitors alike. And then we moved to our last site, the Locke Boarding House in the town of Locke, which was actually once a major haven for Chinese culture, families, and seasonal laborers. And Chair Lee adjourned the meeting there.
All right, so next slide, thank you. So what's next for DPIIC? We're actually going to be back here next week on May 1st for the third Delta Restoration Forum, and this brings together restoration practitioners from all over the Delta and many different both state, local, and federal agencies to talk about current and planned restoration activities. We currently have 75 people registered to attend, 13 posters, and then 7 talks on a wide variety of restoration projects. So we're looking forward to a really good turnout again, and again, utilizing this beautiful building for that event. The restoration subcommittee will be meeting again in August, and I'll keep you all updated on that and the topics we'll be discussing there. We're also already underway in pulling together the fiscal year 2023-2024 Delta Crosscut Budget Report, and this will be the 6th time that we are pulling this report together, and this explains science funding over that particular year. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that data come out later this fall. And then finally, on November 6th, we will have the Autumn DPIIC meeting, and also we'll keep you updated on kind of the topics that we decide to cover there and where we'll be meeting as well. So happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Amanda. Do we have any questions for Amanda or Audrey? No? Oh, Diane, yes.
It was a good gathering, and the only thing is I wish we'd had a little bit more time in Locke. I think the nice thing about the DPIIC is that it brings people out somewhere where they've never necessarily been, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time to like absorb what you're doing, especially for folks that are moving. But I thought it was a really good event. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for all your work on it. I know it isn't easy to plan these tours. It's way more complicated than it seems like. But we got great feedback about it. And I will just make another plug for Locke on May 10th, I believe it is. They have their spring festival. I went last year and it is super fun. Lots of people show up. There's lots of dancing and great information about the community and the history of it. So our family's planning on going again this year. And so if you want to go to Locke on May 10th, you can come with me and we'll head over there and learn to dance. They have these strings and you have to hop over them. It's very, very technical. Yeah, wear your tennis shoes. All right. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No, Madam Chair, we do not. Councilmember Zingali, is there public comment in your?
No,
Oh, wait.
no public comment here.
Okay, thank you. All right, next we'll move on to the executive officer's report, and I'll turn it over to Jessica Pearson.
Thank you. Good morning. I did want to express my appreciation to Mike Campbell again for welcoming us to this beautiful and culturally significant location that we are honored to utilize. It's really a pleasure to have witnessed the development of this kind of ongoing community effort. Really takes a village plus to pull something like this off, and it's exciting to see the next steps that are ahead of us. Mike lives here locally, and he has played a not insignificant role in volunteering his time and leadership in making this project come to fruition and other projects like it. And he's also a generous host to visitors and just a great guy. So we're lucky to have him here in the Delta. A couple announcements. The council has completed our Administrative Procedures Act rulemaking process to finalize and amend the California Code of Regulations to implement the policies that you all adopted in the Delta Plan Ecosystem Amendment. The Ecosystem Amendment includes new and revised regulatory policies, recommendations, and mitigation measures. The amended and added regulations took effect April 1st. And without a comprehensive vision for how to restore the Delta's ecosystem, progress is just going to evolve slowly and in a scattered fashion. Previously, we weren't always aware of projects that were occurring and what the attributes of those projects were, and we hope that this amendment will change that. So this is really a milestone to help us ensure better coordination across ecosystem restoration in the Delta and hopefully accelerated progress. We don't have any new covered actions that have been filed since our last meeting, and the 30-day public review period for the Sacramento County Zacharias Mitigation Bank certification of consistency did close on April 21st with no appeals. We sent one comment letter in the last month. This was to the Delta Independent Science Board, and it was in response to some public comments that they've received about our Delta Levees investment strategy. Specifically, our letter seeks to clarify how that strategy does prioritize human life and safety relative to other criteria. And it also clarifies, coincidentally, how DLIS addresses Clarksburg, which was a subject of some of those comments where we are today. So I encourage you to take a look at that letter. We'll hear more about DLIS later today on the agenda. Personnel announcements, please join me in welcoming a new California Sea Grant State Fellow to our Climate Change and Environmental Justice Unit. Her name is Irazanli Suarez. Irazanli completed her master's degree in global studies and her undergraduate degree in geography and political science at UC Berkeley. Her master's capstone topic was a comparative case study between two indigenous communities in Latin America and the resistance to neoliberal policies. So welcome to Irazanli. We have two topics that earned top attention on our social media last month. On X and Instagram, our most popular posts were the chair's blog, which was co-authored with Special Assistant for Planning and Science Amanda Bohl and Executive Fellow Audrey Cho, who you just heard from, and that was highlighting the recreation in the Delta and specifically the Delta Meadows State Parks property planning process. The post also promoted the DPIIC meeting that we just heard about, and it was shared by the California State Parks account and viewed by many others. With that, I do not believe we have a legal update, so I'm going to invite up Brandon Chapin, our Legislative and Policy Advisor, for his final update to the council. Welcome, Brandon.
Before you start, Brandon, Ben, can you see the screen over here? Because I know we're out over there, so I want to make sure you can see it. Okay, all right, thanks. Go ahead, Brandon.
And we do have an action item on this, this portion as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Chair Lee. I'll circle back to that final after we take care of the business first. So if I can have the first slide, and I can't see if it's up. So if someone could tell me if SB 650 up on the screen. Oh, it's right there. Perfect. Okay. So just a quick update on Senate Bill 650, which, if you remember, was the bill dealing with the Delta Reform Act that the council took a support position on last month. It advanced out of the Senate Natural Resources Committee on April 9th on consent, but it did have one amendment. The amendment that was added established what's known as a severability clause, basically stating that the remainder of the Delta Plan and its regulations remain in effect, even if a portion of them are found invalid by a court. This is consistent with some regular practice of a lot of different statutes in the state. Oh, thank you, Carly. And if you remember, is actually something that occurred with when the Delta Plan was first adopted. It went through litigation, and initial ruling was that because a portion of the Delta Plan was invalid, the entire Delta Plan was invalid at the time. And so this ensures that there's always an enforceable Delta Plan, regardless if there is a portion of it that might be under discussion in the court or anything like that. And without it, a project could potentially proceed without having to stop at the council to get a certification of consistency. Any questions, if any, of that portion. Okay. If I can get the next slide then. So because it was amended, it's just best practice to make sure that the council is still up to date with its support position. And so the recommended position is again support, but this is for the version that was amended on April 9th. And the recommended motion is to authorize the executive officer and legislative and policy advisor or their designee to convey a support position on SB 650, the version amended on April 9th, on behalf of the council and to undertake the activities necessary in consultation with the chair to ensure its successful passage through the legislative process. So I'll pass it over to you, Carolyn.
All right, so before we take a vote or I entertain any motions, I want to ask if there's any public comments on this.
No, Madam Chair, no public comment.
All right.
Not in Eureka either.
Okay. So I will entertain a motion to authorize the executive officer and the legislative and policy advisor or their designee to convey a support position on SB 650 amended on April 9th on behalf of the council and to undertake the activities necessary in consultation with the chair to ensure its successful passage through the legislative process.
So moved.
All right, moved by Member Burgess. Do I have a second? Seconded by Member Hueso. Can we have a roll call vote, Emma?
Councilmember Burgess.
Aye.
Burgess, aye. Councilmember Damrell. Damrell, aye. Councilmember Hueso. Hueso, aye. Councilmember Maranian. Maranian, aye. Councilmember Zingali.
Aye.
Zingali, aye. Chair Lee.
Aye.
The motion passes.
All right, thank you. Brendan, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, so we could put the PowerPoint back up and advance to the next slide. Yeah, so I want to circle back to what Jessica mentioned there. Will be my last council meeting. At the end of the month, I will be taking a position with the California Conservation Corps as their legislative director. I want to say to the council in general, this is a very bittersweet moment. The 9+ years between the council and working in the Delta has been the highlight of my career, and working with all of you on the council and the staff has particularly been a highlight as well. And I put up a bunch of pictures of just that time, and I want to thank Carly, Carly, for providing most of these pictures for me. And I didn't realize there were so many. But a couple of things I just want to highlight up there is, I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is the mentoring of 5 fellows during my time at the council. Viet Long Nguyen, Minachi Odayapan, and our current fellow Audrey Cho, as well as the University of San Francisco fellow Gabriella Chen, and Arizona State fellow Gabriella Chen, and University of San Francisco Ruby Kyle. That's been a big highlight of my time at the council. You wouldn't guess from these pictures of how many tours I've been on. I always try to downplay the tour side of my job, but it truly was great to host people out, the legislators, the public, anyone out in the Delta. It's truly a special place, and it's great to showcase it. The other thing is I want to reiterate that even though I'm moving on to a different agency, I will be championing the council wherever I can. And one thing that I particularly mentioned to staff is to never underestimate small agencies with large missions, and that includes the council. So I want to thank everyone again, and I will not be a stranger. I will definitely be watching from afar and stopping by the council's offices whenever I'm near the CNRA building. So.
Well, we will definitely miss you, Brandon. You have shepherded, I think, every one of us on this council through the appointments process, through the confirmation process, which is part of the appointments process. And there's going to be a gaping hole. I hope that whoever comes in to fill your shoes is ready for all the things that you do and contribute to the council over the years, because it's been fantastic. And your history with the council has really, I think, helped. I know Jessica and all of us, just communicating with everyone, your contacts, your legislative acumen, it's just been greatly, greatly appreciated. So we will definitely miss you. But how lucky for the Conservation Corps that's where you're going, conservation?
Yeah.
Yeah. Department of Conservation?
No, California Conservation.
California,
Corps.
okay, California Conservation Corps. how lucky for them that they get to have you and everything that you'll bring to them. And yeah, don't be a stranger. We'll definitely want to see you again. You know, we have these public meetings once a month that you can still come to. We
Don't
go
be
to
surprised if I still have one of them.
lots of great places in the Delta. So, all right.
Thank you so
I
much.
know
Adriana.
other folks want to say some things too. So, Diane.
So Brandon, you bring intelligence and expertise to the Delta Stewardship Council. And so I just want to say thank you for doing that. But there's this little bit of magic that I see in quite a few of the staff here. And that is you bring your heart and you bring, you're invested. And I just want to say thank you for choosing us to do this. And once a Delta steward, you're always a Delta steward.
Yes,
So just don't forget.
I will not
Um,
forget that.
And yes, they are lucky to get you. But I know that for personal growth, you have to, stretch yourself. And so I congratulate you on taking those steps because it's always kind of scary to go do something that you haven't done yet. And so you'll be missed. And I'm excited to see what other things you can accomplish.
Thank you so much, Diane. I appreciate it.
Yes. Yes, there's two things that, caught my attention just watching you for the past few years. One is that earlier on, playing different roles when whatever it was, you came, you rise to the occasion and did it. I remember in our tours and then later on, what I want to really compliment you that not many people have this is the detail-oriented follow-up that you do. I mean, that is something that is gold, and you can, a lot of times, it's people just don't do it. And I appreciate that. And I think it's a skill that you will take with you and will do good for you and people who work with you. And good luck.
Thank you so much, Maria.
Mhm.
First of all, thank you for your service to the Delta Stewardship Council. Second of all, congratulations. Being the executive director of the California Conservation Corps is a pretty big deal.
Ledge director.
Ledge director, okay.
Not that high.
Well, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Okay, okay. Ledge director, because I heard executive director, I said, wow. But either way, I'm a big fan of the California Conservation Corps since their establishment in the 70s and all the things they've done, preparing the youth for roles in the kind of the environmental sciences and other jobs, fighting fires, doing environmental cleanup, creating trails, all the work that they do across the state of California. It's just a phenomenal organization. And I know you'll use your skills to help them gain a better footing legislatively, and they'll need funding and they'll need support and continue to do their outreach. So it's a wonderful organization. I think you're going to do a great job there. And I hope you do a great job because they really need good people to help guide them and to keep that program on its path of becoming a phenomenal service to the people of California. I used to work with a local corps in San Diego called Urban Corps San Diego. And so I've seen the work that they've done to their education program, helping people, these young kids get high school diplomas. It's just a phenomenal program, and you're going to be part of another great organization. I just congratulate you and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Senator Wayso. And actually, one of my first trip in the position in May is going to the San Diego Center. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Almost anywhere that you hike in California, you go past something that says brought to you by the Conservation Corps. So yeah, it's a great organization. Member Zingali.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, like Mr. Wayso, I've followed the history of the CCC for a long time, and there really is, it's a story of a kind of a pantheon of servant leaders. Some really interesting and important figures have come through there, and I think you are well suited for that, Brandon, because in my faith, you're what we call a servant leader, where you possess competence and knowledge, but also a humility and a humanity and a wisdom that I think the best leadership is made from. So thank you for enriching us in our work here, and congratulations to you and the CCC.
I love that
Thank you.
servant leader. That's wonderful. All right.
Congratulations, young man. I honestly feel that you've done a lot of work that hasn't been seen. And and the work that you do is remarkable. And I want you to know that you go with my best wishes. Okay.
Thank you so much, Judge Jamrow. That means a lot.
Thank you, Judge. Well said. Well said.
Okay, well, I get to pile on here at the end. I just want to recognize that, Brandon's been with us for 7 years, I believe. So he came on as our public participation manager. And I mean, he basically came in and just said, well, we need a new public participation plan. And so he led that effort. And then I think that experience really led to his recognition that we needed to do more to build relationships with the tribes. And so I really credit a lot of the advancement that we've had here at the council to Brandon and his ability to make those relationships quickly and meaningfully, as well as with other NGOs that I think have led to the creation and the durability of the tribal and environmental justice issue paper that you're going to consider later today. So thank you so much for everything you've done. I know that we'll continue to be friends and stay in touch, and we wish you great success. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
Okay, and so ahead for today. Oh, yeah. So we're going to hear from council staff on the tribal and environmental justice issue paper. This important work really began after our 2019 5-year review of the Delta Plan, which provided a recommendation that we needed to double down on our understanding and ability to implement issues that are important to those communities in our work. And immediately afterwards, we will hear from our Delta lead scientist, Dr. Lisa Marie Wyndham-Myers, as she gives her report. We have 2 presentations today from the California Department of Water Resources. First, they will report on their investments in Delta levees for fiscal year 2023-2024. And then to close our meeting, they will provide an update on the Delta Conveyance project. And with that, I conclude my executive officer's report. Happy to answer any questions.
Before we do that, we'll hear from the Delta Conservancy and the Delta
Sorry,
Protection
they
Commission.
are part of this as well. Yes. Sorry, I want to invite up Dan Ray, who's the interim executive officer of the Delta Protection Commission.
Button, yeah. I imagine that name tag might be left
Bring it closer to you.
from a prior period. Some of you know that I was previously Jessica's chief deputy for too many years. For her, maybe not for me. Yeah. But now I'm back for a few more months at the Protection Commission. And it reminded me when I worked for the Stewardship Council, I used to have a graphic that my state park colleagues gave me when I left. That was a quote from the commandant of the Presidio in San Francisco that several people had left the Bay Area and tried to enter the Delta, but they got lost amid the sloughs and islands and never returned. And I think that might be a lesson for Brandon, that this place can get a hold of you.
You always come back, yeah.
But it's been interesting to return. I get to work in familiar places and with old friends and colleagues somewhat, and there's new folks. Some things that were on the horizon when I left now seem much more imminent. And while the issues aren't changed, they're often seen through new lenses, and that's caught my attention. There's a lot more focus on climate adaptation and Delta management. The 30 by 30 initiatives to restore habitats in California is getting a lot of attention. But within the Delta, that means there's more pressure to convert farmland, which, is something that people, especially in the farm community, have been concerned about. Or convert what was farmland not that long ago and convert that to marsh. And combined with the new categorical exception for ecosystem restoration that's available through the Department of Fish and Wildlife, that means that some of the mitigation measures that were so carefully crafted in the Delta Plan to manage those sorts of projects and make sure they don't adversely affect adjoining areas may not apply. And we're hearing, seems like weekly, about an additional habitat restoration project of one scale or another, some outside the priority restoration areas that are identified in the Delta Plan. And it has got some folks calling us, expressing concern. So we're trying to understand that better. I'm detailed staff, and I've got some new staff. Laura Westervelt is here observing your meeting today. And she's helping us pull together information about the cumulative effect of all of this, reporting on conversions that are underway and those that are being planned and anticipated, so we can get a better handle on what's going on. I hope that we can report to you all in the fall what we're learning, so that you'll be able to consider that as you examine projects that are coming before you. Your chair, Lee, came to our heritage area meeting last week or yesterday, and that was great. We were honored, and the staff and our advisory committee are hard at work standing up the heritage area. It's really a talented group on that advisory committee. We've got representatives, well, Mike Campbell is on there, of course, but we've got representatives from the National Park Service, from state parks, from East Bay Parks, from local historical societies and museums in the Delta, local yacht clubs, other community leaders, and they're well connected and very experienced. So they put together these little task force yesterday that Chair Lee talked about, and it was interesting to hear the ways they thought those issues could be addressed. I'm excited about the excursion vessel thing. You know, I worked, before I came back to California, I worked on the Mississippi, and of course in 2015 was when the Delta Queen first began operations on the Delta, boat that had been in California and was a partner with the Delta King, and then was carried through the Panama Canal and refurbished, and then started running excursions up and down the Mississippi. Now, the Delta Queen's a wreck in dry dock, but the growth of the excursion industry on the Mississippi has been nothing but phenomenal. And small communities are welcoming boats. They're building wharves and other facilities for them to land. And it's bringing a lot of vitality and excitement to that waterway. And I hope that we can do something similar here. Another action that's worth noting is the recent completion of our Delta Leaders program. This is a program that was begun as a result of an art show about from Delta painters across the river in Cortland, and the proceeds from attendance there was placed into an endowment, and it's used to support training program for future Delta leaders. In the Delta, folks, their population is small, and folks are double tasked. They're on the school board, they're on their local reclamation district, they're showing up to meetings to oppose the tunnels. They're busy here, there, and everywhere, and this was a way to grow a new set of experienced folks. So that's a big thing, and they're having a reception to honor those leaders at the Bogle Winery here on Friday. And then finally, we're busy trying to replace me. I've promised my wife I wasn't going to do this for too long. So right this week, we're circulating for signature of the contracts with our recruiting firm that'll help us go find the next person. So if you know somebody who you think is talented and would like to lead a small organization that is doing really exciting things now with the Heritage Area and other actions that are underway, you could have them come to our website, www.delta.ca.gov, and get more information, or just send us a resume, and we'll go from there, because we're ready for business. Thanks a lot.
Members, go ahead, Diane.
I just want to say I appreciate Dan stepping outside of retirement, giving up his chicken and garden hobbies a little bit just to help us. And what a great presentation and representation of the Delta Protection Commission. I appreciate you.
Definitely. Thanks for coming here in person too. We really appreciate that.
Thanks, Dan. Now I'd like to invite up Karen Burr from the Delta Conservancy.
And while she's walking up, I just want to do a shout out to a member of the Delta Protection Commission, Tom Slater, who is back after having a heart transplant. I'm so happy to see how healthy he looks, and he's ready to continue to protect the Delta. So I'm glad you're here.
Great, welcome. And Gail Miller has joined us online also. So we have all of our members are here. Welcome, Gail.
Okay.
Thank you. And I also want to give a shout out to Mr. Slater and just gratitude, but also just happy that you are recovering and well. And that really is a miracle. So glad that you're there, and sorry I'm not.
Karen?
Good morning, Chairley and members of the council. It's my pleasure to be here today. My name is Karen Burr. I'm the Deputy Executive Officer for the Delta Conservancy. Is that better? Oh, there we go. How's that? Is that better? All right. Our esteemed leader, Campbell Ingram, sends his regrets for not being here, but only kind of, because they're coming from Scotland. So I don't think he's too upset about it, but glad I can fill in today in his behalf. So we have just a few updates today. One, I wanted to make everyone aware of our Clean Vessel Act, which launched at the beginning of the year. As part of that, our staff is going to be out monitoring and supporting 88 pump out stations over 60 marinas to make sure that the water quality of the Delta stays clean and to provide support for folks in knowing how to do that. Also want to really highlight our nature-based solutions program. The Delta Rice Conversion Program, which is granted through the Nature Conservancy, has enrolled all of the farmers for the year. So I know at the beginning of this, we were a little nervous that we wouldn't be able to get enough farmers to participate in a rice conversion program. That has not been an issue. And a total of 4,000 acres of rice will be planted this year and next. So we're moving forward on that pretty quickly and really excited about that progress. I also did want to talk a little bit about the interagency coordination, largely through the DPIIC meeting that was already discussed today. So I won't spend much time there, but do want to highlight just one of the main topics that came out of that meeting, which is that the discussion was really robust around the 179 million that came to the Delta. And I just want to highlight, in contrast, that over $1 billion went to the coast and almost $1 billion went to the Sierra Nevadas. So when we do look at that 159 million in comparison to that, I think it just highlights the importance and the needs of funding to the Delta. So just that was a really robust conversation that I wanted to make sure got highlighted in this meeting. And then on that same note, we have a Prop 4 survey available. Our $29 million of Prop 4 funding is going to be going out, hopefully starting in the next 6 months. We released a survey and we're hoping that anyone who's interested in receiving funding from us can go in and give us some highlights on what you're looking for, how we can make it better fit your needs, and what types of projects you might be interested in funding. So please take the time to go in and do that. We would appreciate it. And then also want to highlight that the DPIIC meeting will be coming up, the Delta Interagency Invasive Species Coordination Meeting, which was already mentioned today. We really encourage people to come. It's a long title. And then finally, I want to highlight that at our next Conservancy meeting, we will be considering we're very proud of the money that we put into the community. So much like the funding that we put in here at the Clarksburg Schoolhouse and the Pittsburgh boat launch, we are going to be considering an acquisition project for the Delta Aquatic Center in the amount of $2.1 million. Another project that I think really will have a huge impact on the Delta. So if folks are interested in knowing more about that or have comments on that, we will be having a presentation and consideration for the acquisition at our next meeting. And that is all I have today. Thanks so much for having me here. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Jessica, anything else?
That's all I have, unless there are questions for Karen or any questions for me on my report.
Nope. All
Okay,
right.
thank you so much, Karen.
Do we have any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair, we do not.
All right, we are going to move on to agenda item number 7, which is our tribal and environmental justice issue paper. And I want to welcome up again Amanda Bowl and Jeff Henderson.
Thank you, Shirley. Again, good morning again to everyone. Again, Amanda Bull, Special Assistant for Planning and Science. And with me today is Jeff Henderson, our Deputy Executive Officer for Planning and Performance. And we're very excited and honestly a little nervous, not for any reason, it's just been so many years in the making to be here and presenting what we hope is the final tribal and environmental justice issue paper to all of you for your consideration for adoption. We're going to walk you through at a very high level the comments we received during the public review period and the tribal consultation period, as well as the edits that we made to in response to these comments. Before I begin, I would like to take a moment, however, to acknowledge some key staff who have dedicated much time and care to this process. First, Environmental Program Manager Morgan Chow, who brought knowledge and expertise as we developed and implemented outreach throughout the issue paper and coordinated with the EJ expert group. Environmental scientist Megan Thompson, who wrangled and organized our extensive list of references and was the absolute queen of what is known as the Internet Wayback Machine, which is where you go when you're trying to find websites that aren't as easy to find anymore. So much thanks to Megan for figuring all that out for us. Environmental scientist Annie Merritt, who did much of the original writing of the paper and brought a keen eye for details, editing, and proofreading. Senior environmental scientist Annika Ragsdale, who brought fresh eyes and a deep experience in working in and on in EJ spaces. And executive fellow Audrey Cho, who brought a needed historical knowledge related to Chinese Americans and water rights. And then this also has already been mentioned, Brandon Chapin and his excellent and meaningful engagement with our tribal partners. And then also a dozen other past and current staff have also contributed to the development of this issue paper. And I'd like to give just a special shout out to Dr. Jessica Rudnick, our former social science extension specialist, and Dr. Chelsea Batavia, who really helped us frame and contextualize the work that you see before you now. All right, next slide, please. So just a short recap of what got us to this point. We started this process in early 2021 following a recommendation of the 2019 or from the 2019 Council 5-year review. Our initial work focused on background research such as a lit review, seminar series, review of public comments to help us understand the historical context in which we were doing this work. In 2022, we conducted 22 interviews with EJ representatives to help us understand the current status of environmental justice issues in the Delta. We also conducted 4 tribal pre-consultation, and this was done before we even began writing the paper and analyzing all the information that we were collecting. And we really felt this was important to help us understand the perspectives of the tribes in the region. We formed an EJ expert group, which met over 20 times. Staff conducted public outreach with over 10 presentations and community outreach events. And then on September 3rd, 2024, the public review draft of the issue paper was released, which opened the 90-day tribal comment period, as well as the 60-day public review period. And then at the September 2024 council meeting, staff presented a detailed overview of the public review draft. And I'm not going to go into that level of detail today so that we really can focus on the public comments and the changes we received, but we can certainly answer any questions that you all have. All right, next slide, please. All right, so during the public review period, staff consulted with three tribes and received 14 written and verbal public comments. This included comments raised during staff presentations, tabling at community events, and comments from council members and members of the public at the September 2024 council meeting. Key comments included clarifying the intent and scope of the issue paper, better integrating tribal justice into the EJ framework that we use throughout the paper, expanding the description of historical state-sanctioned violence against tribes, and being more intentional with our language in the recommendations, especially in regards to tribal representation and engagement. The Delta Independent Science Board provided comments, especially in regards to clarifying the scope and intent and better integrating tribal justice into our framework, as well as very helpful section by section edits. Next slide, please. So in response to all of the comments received, staff made several changes. Attachment 1 to the staff report for this agenda item provides a section by section description of the changes made to the paper. And I'm not going to go through that entire information sheet, but provide kind of, again, a high level summary of the edits we made. First, we clarified the intent and scope of the issue paper, both by making the title and the language in the executive summary and introduction more explicit. We added results from interviews conducted with tribes on interweaving traditional knowledge, and you'll find that in section 5. We incorporated tribal justice into the environmental justice framework utilized throughout the issue paper, and you can see that on the slide in front of you. We addressed the interplay of the issue paper and Delta DAPS, namely in the recommendations. We expanded the description of historical state-sanctioned violence against tribes, added further context around the Chinese Exclusion Act and the Alien Land Law. We also incorporated relevant findings from the 2023 Delta Residents Survey, which really helped inform the current issue section of the paper. We incorporated the ISB section by section comments. As I mentioned, many of them were very helpful and really contributed to the paper. Staff also made relevant changes to the paper to be consistent with other council initiatives such as Delta DAPS and Science for Communities, as well as new research findings, for example, the Yolo County Farm Worker Survey. And then finally, staff made clarifying edits to improve readability. So now I'm going to actually hand it over to Jeff, who's going to talk about what's next.
What's next? Thank you, Amanda. We are already advancing some of the recommendations in this paper by forming the Council's Climate Change and Environmental Justice Unit 1 year ago, and forming the Council's Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee earlier this year. Our CCEJ unit currently includes 2 staff and 2 fellows working to advance the issue paper recommendations and strategies. Currently, the unit is engaged in several initiatives, including 2 originating from the TEJ paper. 1, a Delta Plan analysis to identify gaps in the current Delta Plan with respect to tribal and environmental justice and climate adaptation, and to identify potential options to address those gaps. And 2, Science for Communities 3.0, which brings community organizations and researchers together to explore issues of importance to EJ communities. As the name would suggest, this is the 3rd round of facilitating these unique partnerships, and we'll be kicking that off in May. The JEDI Committee consists of 11 council staff members. It's focused on advancing a culture of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in the council's operations, and ensuring that our work in Delta communities is well grounded in these principles. The committee is led by our JEDI coordinator, Jamari Robinson, and is currently completing a JEDI strategic plan for the organization. And we look forward to bringing you updates on these items at future meetings, as well as other initiatives outlined in the TEJ paper as these initiatives are completed. But the first step here is to finish the paper, and we need your help to do it. In your packet today, you'll find a resolution titled Resolution of the Delta Stewardship Council Adopting the Final Tribal and Environmental Justice Issue Paper. That resolution, if approved by the council, would adopt the issue paper and direct staff to present to the council future actions consistent with, contemplated by, or recommended in the issue paper. This is an important first step, taken at a critical and challenging time to advance DEI and EJ principles. And these actions are long overdue. So on behalf of Amanda and the extraordinary team she recognized earlier, and with gratitude to all who informed and contributed to this work since it began, with humility, I offer the following staff recommendation. Next slide, please. Oh, the PowerPoint. So, staff recommendation is that the council approve Resolution 2025-05, which would adopt the final tribal and environmental justice issue paper titled Tribal and Environmental Justice in the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, History, Current Perspectives, and Recommendations for a Way Forward. And that concludes our report. Happy to entertain any questions and look forward to the potential adoption.
Thank you. Thanks for all your hard work on this. I know that it's taken a little bit longer than we had wanted, but I think every one of us agreed when we made that decision to go out for more public comment and more review, that we wanted quality over pushing something through that hadn't really gone through a thorough process. And I feel very comfortable that we've really thoroughly vetted this and had lots and lots of input. And I know how much work that was for you all and how many edits you made in response to that. So I just want to thank you so much for literally your years of hard work on this. It's happening while I'm the chair, so I get the benefit of saying that it happened under me, but I know that there have been many other chairs involved in this, conversations that happened, and people, really standing behind it over the years to keep it going and get it through the finish line. So congratulations on that. Are there any other members that want to make a comment before I ask for a motion? No. All right. So do we have a copy of the resolution up? Yeah, I see Dan. Yeah.
I can also grab you a copy of the resolution from the table outside.
Okay. Yeah. So I will entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2025-05, which would adopt the final tribal and environmental justice issue paper entitled Tribal and Environmental Justice in the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, History, Current Perspectives, and Recommendations for a Way Forward. And Dan Zingali had his hand up early, so I will call on Member Zingali.
Madam Chair, before we have a motion, do you want to take public comment?
Oh, yeah, good idea. Okay, we'll take public comment and then I'll turn it over to Member Zingali. Thanks, Emma. I'm like in such a hurry to get this across the finish line. All right, any other public comment on this item?
Yes, we have public comment from Artie Valencia. You should be able to speak now.
Okay, great. Good morning, Chair and members of the council. My name is Artie Valencia and I'm the Flood and Land Restoration Manager at Restore the Delta. Thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment on the Tribal Environmental Justice in the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta report. As mentioned in our September comments, we were grateful to be part of the writing process of this report. It serves as a good starting point, but more work needs to get done. It is essential to provide adequate representation and participation of EJ communities and tribes during the current administration. We appreciate the council's diligence in preparing this report. I would also like to acknowledge that over the years, we've worked with several staff members, interns, fellows, and on this project with DPIIC, Delta Adapts, and various social science and land water science projects. Many of the people on your team truly love the estuary, and we are grateful for working with so many fine people. We appreciate the changes made to prioritize tribes and give them appropriate recognition. However, there are still certain areas of improvement, such as the importance of traditional ecological knowledge, drinking water systems, redlining, and environmental hazard sections specifically, and how EJ communities are being set against each other. Although traditional ecological knowledge is mentioned in the report, it's not included as the best available science framework, and Indigenous science must be considered as valid and essential alongside Western methodologies. By not fully integrating TEK into the report's scientific foundation, the work risks excluding important knowledge, systems that might have been preserved, ecological balance in the region for generations. Furthermore, we wish to remind the council that numerous reports in the media indicate that the Safe Water Drinking Program is not delivering the results needed by the San Joaquin Valley drinking water groups. Restore the Delta continues to support the Community Water Center, Allensworth Progressive Alliance, Leadership Council, and Clean Water Action, and will do so in the future. To that end, we want to point out that the report lacks specific details about the 11 drinking water wells mentioned in the September 2024 meeting. This information is critical for informing communities about potential contamination risks, along with being able to map the wells and ensuring accurate water level data. The truth is that our environmental justice, social justice, tribal partners understand and support clean drinking water for environmental justice communities in the Valley. We also support affordable and clean drinking water for Southern Californians who live and economically disadvantaged communities. However, state political leaders and senior management at the state agencies follow the lead of the state water contractors and too often weaponize and pit the needs of EJ communities against each other. Moreover, for decades, the needs of those in water expert communities have been weaponized against EJ and tribal communities dependent on a healthy Delta watershed. Not by the people of expert communities. They are our partners, brothers and sisters in the struggle for water justice, but by the state to justify not meeting the mandate to reduce Delta reliance. Finally, we want to raise concerns about the redlining and environmental hazards section on the redlining and its correlation with present-day environmental hazards being incomplete. Key issues include misrepresentation of flood risks in the urban Delta communities, particularly in Stockton, with clear data and statistics, where redlining and subsidence is a primary factor, although there was a map provided, there is still a plethora of information that needs to be included from the Census Bureau to paint a clear picture of the systemic exclusion of disadvantaged communities from infrastructure improvements and investments like Prop 4 funding. So even though progress has been made, much work remains to engage tribal and EJ communities effectively. It's important that the council improves and expands the report and compensates the tribes and EJ communities. And the council should also recognize that environmental justice cannot be achieved by putting the needs of one population over the other. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to comment and for your continued effort.
Thank you. Any other public comment, Emma?
No, Madam Chair, no further public comment.
All right. And any public comment from members in Golly's area? I'm guessing no.
No.
Okay. All right. And I want to ask Jorge, do you think that I need to read the entire resolution into the record, or is it good that we've just provided it with all of the packet? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I'm going to call for a motion again, and I will call on members in Golly who had his hand up.
Thank you. And I do want to say I'm mindful of the challenges and the work that's still ahead, but I'm also proud of the process and the progress that this report recommends and would like to move that we approve the resolution to adopt the issue paper.
All right. Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Member Maranian seconds. Emma, can we have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Burgess.
Aye.
Burgess, aye. Councilmember Demerel. Demerel, aye. Councilmember Hueso.
Aye.
Hueso, aye. Councilmember Maranian. Councilmember Maranian.
Aye.
Maranian, aye. Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Miller, aye. Councilmember Zingali.
Aye.
Zingali, aye. Chair Lee.
Aye.
Chair Lee, aye. The motion passes.
Yay. I think that deserves a round of applause. All right. Great job. Thank you. And thank you for that presentation. Thanks everybody for all your hard work on it. Next, we're going to have our lead scientist report. So I will welcome Dr. Lisa Marie Wyndham-Myers.
Thank you, Chair Lee. Thank you. Can we get that figure up? That'd be great. Thanks. Well, it's great for me to highlight a series of papers that have started coming out, and I talked about them back in March, but this is an opportunity to really highlight, again, this flagship synthesis product of our synthesis and communications team within the science program. And what you'll see here is this is the graphic that's actually used in the intro chapter of this State of the Bay Delta Science report, which comes out roughly every 2 years, but sometimes a little bit longer. So the last one there was a 2008, 2016, 2023, which you might remember the 23 that was focused on base of the food web, plants and algae and so on. But this one is focused, as you can see, on extreme events, so which are becoming more abundant and more intense. So The reason we do this State of the Bay Delta Science is to report the state of the science for topics that are relevant to Bay Delta management. And they're reviewed, they're in a peer-reviewed open access journal that we also support called San Francisco Estuary and Watershed Science. So several times we've been highlighting this particular journal because it's made specifically for bringing in managers and policymakers to understand the science that's being communicated, that's being synthesized. There's always an invited editorial board, and in this case, Jan Thompson, who's the lead author on this introductory chapter, is a emeritus of the U.S. Geological Survey, and also on the editorial board is Cliff Daum, so a twice passed Delta lead scientist, and coming from the University of New Mexico. So this particular issue is the fourth in the series, and it covers extreme events that are relevant to the Delta. The rationale for having this special issue is that extreme events are becoming the hydroclimate is becoming more volatile. So it's, lots of highs and lows and a lot of variability that's increasing, including the magnitude, the frequency, the duration, the rate of change, and the spatial extent of these effects. So as you can see here, some of the ones that we're highlighting here are severe droughts, intense heat waves, stronger storms, and catastrophic wildfires. And we have to start thinking about these as interactive events, that they're happening on top of each other and in a whiplash kind of way. And one of the chapters that we'll focus on that's in this special issue that came out in March is on governance. So basically building out the ability to adapt and being able to respond to these crises when they happen. And also being proactive, anticipating them. Okay, so these are things that are not a surprise. I'm not trying to overwhelm you with these points, but the value of having this special issue is to show what are our opportunities to be more nimble, more flexible and adaptive in the science and the governance to respond to these events. Some key facts that come out in this particular introductory chapter are the increase in average annual air and water temperatures in the Delta over the last decades. And there's some variability about where you go, but they're all in general increasing, and it's almost double what the rates used to be in the earlier part of the century. So the last 50 years or so have been quite rapid. Climate change is likely to change, it's likely to reduce the frequency of atmospheric rivers, but increase the intensity. So we're just going to start having a lot more big dumps of water. And so there's obviously flooding aspect issues of that, as well as drought aspect issues. Another thing to highlight is that in the last 6 years, California's had its 8 largest wildfires, all of which are within the Delta greater watershed. So wildfires are just becoming a much more important factor for all of us to consider, even here in the Delta. What this special introduction also calls out, again, is the need for long-term monitoring, just the really importance of being able to identify changes over time, what's different now than in the past, using region-specific climate models. So not the general for the whole state because it's so variable, but really what's happening right here using these data sets. And then again, the growing need for flexible and adaptive frameworks that enable management decisions in the face of all this uncertainty. And you'll also have a handout here that goes through some of the key papers that have already come out. And then we'll be highlighting, and again, those are here, the governance chapter led by Jessica Rudnick, the heat waves and rising temperatures issue that was led by Brian Maharja from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, and Jessica Rudnick, who was at the U.S. Forest Service until recently. And then Rosemary Hartman led the drought in the Delta socioecological effects. And those are, again, already published online. And then In August, we're expecting to see, or at least in September, a release of the next 3, and we will be focusing on those later in the summer. Again, those are the ones that are dealing with wildfires or catastrophic wildfires and their effects on water quality, and then atmospheric rivers and flooding. So, and then I should say, lastly, there's a perspectives paper that's been submitted, which is an overview of like, what does this all mean and how can we start moving forward to be better prepared in a collaborative way across all of these different entities, because we have I've learned this word now, polycentric governance system in the Delta. No one person is in charge. There's just so many different bodies that are affecting responses. So that is a review of the paper. Glad to take any questions on it.
Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Maria.
It's something that, I just wanted you to shed light, because we talk a lot about a lot of resource management or governance, right? But this is for the first time that I'm hearing, and what's included in.
I think the term, which is one that they use in the paper, the Jessica Rednick-led paper, is really focusing on there's climate adaptation, climate mitigation, and then there's climate science. And the adaptation and the mitigation responses they need to use science, but they're not science. And how we do that, how we actually execute mitigation and adaptation is varied between all of these different agencies. So governance ultimately is about the policies and responses that are possible for those two aspects.
So the combination of the two, and how and when, which one is used for what, that is the governance.
Yeah, and it's always both and, because you have to adapt and you have to mitigate it at some level.
Right. Thank you.
Good question. Yes, Diane.
It's interesting too, because all of this isn't happening in a vacuum.
Nope.
So there's, industry, and there's different types of things that are contributing to this that are also happening. And so as much as we're trying to do what we're trying to do, there's also other polycentric government influences that are happening, whether it's, our economy values, or all the other things that we're trying to balance. And I really like that graphic, because as someone that has to be kind of that bridge to my constituents, helping them understand these things in a more simplified way helps people then invest in doing what they can to help, prevent it, soften it, decrease it. And the other part of this is it's not unique to the Delta or to the state. You're seeing all kinds, the fires in New Jersey, you're seeing all kinds of different, Canada, it's everywhere. So it's not just Delta, it's worldwide. So.
Yeah, just to highlight what you're saying, Diane, and one of the other key points about this was this was the longest drought period that we've seen since, the Middle Ages, or, in Europe, at least the Middle Ages, like since 800. And so there used to be a really big drought in the 1500s that people talked about. They don't talk about that anymore. They talk about the period of 2000 to 2021, because it's 22 years of drought. And that affects soils, the intermittence of streams, the connectivity, salinity intrusion, all of these things. We haven't seen this kind of drought since really 1,200 years ago. So it's a Western U.S. issue. It's not just a Delta issue.
Thank you.
I just wanted to remind people, I think you maybe already did, but there is a summary sheet available if you don't want to print out the, several hundred pages of the articles, which I encourage people to do if they have the time. that has just a very helpful boiled down bullet points of what's included in each article. So please take a look at that. It's also available on our website. It's the State of Bay Delta Science 2025 Extreme Events Information Sheet.
Thanks for that reminder.
Okay, so let's move forward. Okay, so let's go on to some of our activities. We have two of our peer review, our scientific peer reviews in progress right now. And this is one of our, again, core functions. One of them is being done for the Department of Water Resources for the state, and the other is for the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. For the Bureau of Reclamation, that one is in progress. It will finish up in May, and it is a review of the water temperature model within the it's called, we call it HEC-RES-SIM, but it's the Hydrologic Engineering Center Reservoir Simulation program. It just does. That's why we call it HEC-RES-SIM. So anyway, that one's actually started already. There's 4 scientists who have taken the charge. And all of this is, of course, online. You can see it. We're extremely transparent about that. And the charge questions is basically, how is that water temperature platform working do they have success, and how can it be improved? So it's really an effective trying to look for improvements. And then the second one, again, is a review of the science plan of the Healthy Rivers and Landscapes program that the Department of Water Resources is standing up. And in this case, we have 3 subject matter experts who are under contract, and that will be beginning shortly, and that will come out in late June. And the charge questions, again, they're online, but they're related specifically to things like the metrics that are being used, the hypotheses being used, the models and the monitoring networks that are part of those analyses, and then helping identify information gaps. The point of that is it's not a review of the overall implementation of HRL. It's a review of the science that's being used within it. And again, those are all online, the charges and who's involved and so on. And then the last thing is on your radar. So there's really 2 major things I want to highlight. One is that in just a little under 2 weeks, we'll have the Delta Research Awards seminar series final presentation. There's 3 talks all on salmon. And they are the last of that series that if you tuned in last year, it was a really interactive way to let a broad audience on a Zoom platform interact with the scientists that collected the data. It's a requirement of having received funding from the Stewardship Council, the science program, that they give these seminars. And so it's about a 15-minute talk followed by 45 minutes of questions. So a really nice interactive setting. And those have been successfully attended. And I highly recommend this particular set because all 3 are focused on salmon, which I think we're the 3rd year of closed salmon fish. The fishery for salmon is closed, and there's a lot of drought issues for recovery of different runs. All right, that's coming up in about 2 weeks. And then later that same week on Friday is again the Coastal and Marine Sciences Institute meeting that we're having co-coordinated with us and them on UC Davis's campus on microplastic pollution. Again, you have to register to attend, but it is online and it will be recorded, so it will be viewable at a later time. But if you want to interact with the scientists, being online would allow that. That's on Friday, May 9th, and it's an all-day event on campus at UC Davis. And then the last one to put on your radar is the State of the Estuary Conference, which is coming up at the end of the year, late October, 28th and 29th. Again, that's a flagship conference for us. It's the estuary side of the Bay Delta Science Conference that we have every 2 years, and they also have theirs every 2 years. And the call for abstracts is expected to be open soon. So if you're interested in presenting, then there's a link in here for you to get involved. So That's all I have on your radar. Okay. And then I will also go through by the numbers. So thank you so much. All right, so these numbers are actually looking again a lot like they did in March. This is the last month we're talking about snow. So we'll start talking about water and water temperatures coming up in May. But for right now, the precipitation is actually quite similar to what we had in March for both the Northern and Central Sierra. It's a little bit lower for Central Sierra than last month. But what's really changed is snowpack. So the melt is coming. I don't know if you can see this, but the 86% of normal for Northern Sierra, that snowpack last month was 120%. So we've lost a whole lot of that very quickly. The Central Sierra has also dropped from 89% of average at this time of year to 76% of average. And then statewide, it dropped again from about 96% to where we are now at about 75% of average of what you would have expected in over a 20-year average. So just giving you a sense of like the melt has started and we're on our way. Those of you who live in snow country would know this already. Okay, so then what does that mean for water flow? The Sacramento River is actually flowing at about the same rate as it was in March, which was a high flow, so it's still flowing high. San Joaquin River is still low, so if you notice that it's highlighted in red, that it's 29% of what we'd normally expect at this time of year. So it's still low. It was low last month and it was low the month before, but it's still on the low side. So we'll see how that continues through the year. And then lastly, the exports from the Central Valley Project and the State Water Project are down. They're about, basically last month, they were at about 6,000 cubic feet per second, and then now they're about 4,500 feet per second. So it's about a third lower than what it was in March in terms of those exports. And there's no other concerns to note here, just that's where we are.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Dr. Wyndham Myers from any of our members? Any comments? All right, do we have any public comment? I'm sorry, member Miller first. We have a little delay. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that. No, just again, deep appreciation for the science program and bringing a source of truth really into this, into everything we do. And especially thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't get to do this earlier. I apologize to you and Ms. Wyndham Myers and Brandon, who I didn't get to congratulate, but for really engaging and listening to so many people, not just in the Delta, but all over the state that have a real interest in understanding what this water supply in our ecosystem looks like. So it's just a huge benefit, and would just encourage everyone, the more you can let people know about it, the better I think everyone will be. So thank you.
Thanks, Gail. All right. I'm sorry, Emma, was there any public comment?
There is no public comment, Madam Chair.
All right. And none from member Zingali's area?
Correct.
Okay. Great. Before we move on to agenda item number 9, we're a little bit ahead of schedule, so we're going to go ahead and take a little comfort break here, and we will reconvene at 11:15. Welcome again. We are on agenda item number 9. I'd like to welcome the Department of Water Resources, who is going to talk to us about their annual report on the Delta Levee investment strategy that we call DLIS. So welcome Brian Brock, and Jeff Henderson is going to do an introduction as well.
Thank you, Chair Lee. It is my pleasure to introduce Brian again, who's addressed the board several times. Wanted to give a little bit of background before we begin on the Delta Levees investment strategy and some of its requirements. And it begins from the Delta Reform Act, Section 85306 states that the Council, in consultation with the Central Valley Flood Protection Board, shall recommend in the Delta Plan priorities for state investments in levee operation, maintenance, and improvements in the Delta, including both levees that are a part of the State Plan of Flood Control and non-project levees. The council responded by adopting amended Delta Plan Policy RRP1, otherwise known as the Delta Levees Investment Strategy, or DLIS, which formally became law on January 1, 2024. DLIS creates a prioritization for discretionary levy improvement investments in the Delta based on risk to state interests. And those state interests were defined by the council to represent people, property, habitat, water supply, and the Delta as an evolving place. DLIS is inherently based on risk, considering risk as probability times consequence of flooding. In other words, it's not enough for a levee to be protecting something important. If the levee is in great shape, then the risk is low. However, if the levee is protecting, say, a Delta community, an urban area, or a state highway, and it's in poor condition, then the risk is going to be high. DLIS categorizes islands and tracts throughout the Delta into 3 categories: very high, high, and other priority. DLIS then directs DWR to make investments in the very high islands first before going on to invest in the other categories. DWR can deviate from the prioritization, but in those cases, it requires explanation. Remember, just because an island or a tract is designated other doesn't mean it's not important. It just means that it represents a relatively lower risk compared to all the other Delta islands. And finally, DLIS requires DWR to document all of this in a written and verbal report to the council, which is why we're here today. There are requirements for the report that are also described in the regulation, but I'll let Brian go over those during his presentation. This will be the 3rd report that we've received from DWR, but it's the first that we've received since the regulation has taken effect. So that concludes my introduction, and welcome, Brian.
Thanks, Jeff. Can everybody hear me fine? Yeah. Well, thanks for having me today, council members and staff. I'd like to introduce a couple of individuals because this will, even though I've presented to you before, this will probably be my last time. I wanted to introduce Teji Sandhu.
Not because you don't like us.
Not because I don't like you, no. But because I've been with the state for
Retiring.
34 years and yeah, would like to maybe take on some other challenges here pretty soon. so.
Congratulations.
Well, yeah, no, not. Teji Brian Barnhart, one of our attorneys, is here today as well. Kelly Soule, who is taking over as, or has taken over as the Delta Resiliency Branch Manager, is here today. And she will probably be performing this task in the future. And then last but not least, Bobby Javarnajad, who is the senior engineer in charge of all of the special projects that we run out of the Delta. So very important program that Bobby's, and they're here for moral, but and potentially informational support as well. So I may ask them if you guys have questions. So with that, I'll get into the purpose of the report. Jeff went over this quite a bit, but as a result of the regulations, the department is required to report on an annual basis of our discretionary expenditures in the Delta. And there's several categories that we need to go over. Fast forward 2 slides, please. Right there. These are the categories, and I'll just go over them real quick, and if anybody has any questions, we can talk about them. But basically, on an annual basis, we take a look at the prior year. So we're reporting for 23-24 state fiscal year. Expenditures for levies. Next, it's a list of all proposed levy improvement projects that we got, and I'll get into the details of that. List of awarded levy improvement and maintenance projects, funding level, cost shares, priority, and locations. And this is both improvement projects and maintenance, so I'll be talking about the subventions program here. A description of awarded projects in 23-24, because this is the reporting period for that time. Priority level of flood protection changes or achieved. list of funded projects that are inconsistent with the Delta Levy investment strategy. And similar to what Jeff said, just because it's another doesn't mean it's not also important. And we have criteria that we go to, and it doesn't always align with the highest priorities, our discretionary spending. A summary of the resource DWR's rationale for levy improvement project proposals submitted but not awarded. And then finally, a summary and location of all funded levy improvement projects which were completed during that reporting year. Next slide, please. So the first one is a description of 23-24 expenditures for Delta levies, and this is an overview. Next slide, please. We've got three major programs that we've got in the Delta, for levy improvements, not including the subventions program. Though two of those are run out of the Division of Multi-Benefit Initiatives. One is the Delta Levees program, which is what Bobby is in charge of. The other one is system-wide, and it takes a look at, those are mainly in the YOLO bypass and in other places in the Delta. And then flood management has some significant, and those are mainly urban levies and not the rural levies that my group takes. So the number of projects for Delta levies was 11, and we expended $30.9 million last year. System-wide had 3 projects with expenditures of $1.4 million, and flood management had 8 projects and expended 61.3. And these are, it doesn't mean that these projects are complete. They might be in the planning phase, they might be in design phase, they might be partway through construction, but this is the money that we actually expended in 23-24 out of the 3 major programs, not including subventions. Next slide, please. And this is a detail of what those projects are and what phase they're in. We can just take a second if anybody has any questions, and you can see some of them are in planning phase and some of them are in. But this is a list of both the priority, the expenditures, the project title, location, and the district number. Next slide, please. System-wide expenditures, these are the 3 projects for $1.4 million, and their DLIS priority. Next slide, please. And here is the list of flood management expenditures. You can see a lot of the urban levies. West Sacramento, $25 million is a big one. American Ribbon Common Features, lots of partnering with Army Corps of Engineers, 10.7. These are probably all projects that you all are familiar with. Next slide, please. Sacramento, say that again? I'm sorry, I'm not as familiar with division.
Thanks. And just for those listening, I asked what the question
State
was.
Plan of Flood Control.
SPFC stood for.
State Plan of Flood Control.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. So the next slide represents what just kind of a high-level overview of the subventions program. The subventions program is a reimbursement program that helps the different rural levies in the Delta, about 72-ish different agencies. Reclamation districts out there do operations and maintenance, and we operate that program on behalf of the organization. Well, we operate that on the a different organization.
Flood
Um,
board, is that the flood board?
Yeah, yeah, sorry, the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. Thank you, Jessica. So we operate that on behalf of them. It's our money. We run the program, but we go to the board meeting every year. They authorize the amount of money that we're able to spend that year. And in 22-23, because it's always in arrears, that so we get claims after they've done them, and then we review the claims, and then we give them the amount. So the earliest we're able to report in any given year is 2 years prior, basically, for this report. So in 22-23, we were approved to spend $13.5 million. The final claims reimbursed were 70 different claims, 70 different agency. And we reimbursed out of that $13.5 million, $12.9 million for subventions claims. In 23-24, which is this reporting year, we were authorized to spend $14 million. We're getting those claims in now, we're reviewing them, and we'll report next year on how much those final claims ended up being. In 22-23, as far as the priority list that DLIS identifies, 23 of those 70 agencies were in the very high. 22 out of those 70 were in the high, and then 17 were other, and then 8 were actually not identified in DLIS. Just a couple of fun facts regarding the subventions program. We are able to compensate up to 75%. So the local cost share is 25%. And there's a few deductions that are on top of that. It's kind of like your HMO or something like that. They have to pay a deductible. 60 rural islands have to pay a deductible of $1,000 per levy mile before we start compensating at that 75%. And urban levies are $2,500 per mile. And there were 8 of those urban levies that participate in the program as well. Any questions on the?
Should I? Go ahead, Member Maranian. Microphone.
So, yes, my question was, I'm trying to understand this as a more global level in terms of funding and what funds what. So you would say that it was total $100 million almost at the beginning. So is that like an average? Number one, my question. Number two is, so there are different pots that come together to cover this, number two. And then number three is, so when you create a list of priorities, then not everything gets billed, right? Or it does. Like you project that all this has to be done, let's say in a span of a year, but then does it get done because it is, or you have to wait for funding? Those are my questions.
Okay. The first one, your first question about, is this a typical 100 million? Most of our funding comes from proposition monies, and it depends on the different propositions that are approved by the voters of California. So if we, back in 2010, 2012, we and a little bit before that, we received Prop 1, Prop 1E, 84. There were a lot of propositions, but then there was a dry spell for several years. Prop 4, which was recently approved, we just received. So so I'm going to add, it depends. It depends on the money that we have available, and you can't just snap your fingers and, that money goes away. So there's both a planning process that the department goes through for soliciting grants and things of that nature, which takes time. We have to write guidelines and go out with PSPs and things of that nature. And then there's the process of actually constructing the projects and planning, design, permitting. In the Delta, as you know, everything takes a lot of time in the Delta. It's probably one of the hardest places to construct out in the state of California for a number of different reasons. I put it right up there with Lake Tahoe. So all of these things take time, and the ability to get money out the door, the real money is spent during construction. So it might take 5, 7, 8 years to do all of this planning, before we get the money, do a BCP to get the money in place, and then go out with a PSP. It might take 5
Do
or
you
s-
have to have all of the money to start, or you can start and then get pieces?
we have, if we're going to award a grant, we have to have that money in hand. Now, sometimes we only award planning and grants, and that is the case with our last PSP, which I'll go over. But if we're going to write a contract, we have to have the authority to spend that money. So, yeah,
Okay.
doesn't mean it's the whole project, but.
And then when you did the list of the priorities that has to be done, and let's say half of that money gets raised for that time period, then you decide the most important priority that you had first gets. I mean, how would that selection happen then?
Sure. Well, there's a couple of different lists of priorities, right? The Delta Stewardship Council has identified their DLIS priorities. That's not always, that's one element that the department considers when selecting going through our discretionary process of identifying and selecting projects. So there's the DLIS priorities, and then each PSP has specific criteria that we score projects against that end up coming into our program. So, yeah, including one of the highest points that's awarded in a PSP is DLIS, is DLIS priorities. But there are others too. Constructability, environmental, we've been doing a lot of multi-benefit projects, so all of those things are associated with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, Member Burgess.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi.
So yeah, I'm a little curious on the budget. We just had the DPIIC and talked about subventions. And one of the things that I said at that meeting was there's no certainty still. There's no budget that's ongoing for it. And so you're saying it's budgeted. Is that like every year you just try to come up with a number that you'll be able to spend? How does that work?
Well,
for the subvention?
I'll say a couple of things. I will say that the subventions, and I've said this before, that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So subventions is one of our highest priority, if not the highest priority program that we have. But with that said, we need money to run that program. And then that money is authorized by the legislature and approved by the governor through the BCP process. So we need to have that money someplace, and then we need authority to spend that money. So to say it has perpetual funding, that's not true.
Right.
But Prop 4, we have interpreted to be eligible for the subventions program.
Right.
And the subventions program is one of our highest priorities. But with that being said, we still have to go through the authorization process through the legislature in order to.
And I appreciate that. I just like to raise everybody's understanding of that, because I know DWR does want to do that. And yet those of us that want to keep raising that to our legislators to make sure that maybe it could be an ongoing budget thing that we always include.
Yeah. Back in the subventions program's been going on for 50-ish years now. And before 2000, it was more baseline funded out of many different processes. And if you want additional details on that, I'm sure Gilbert Cosio can talk to you about that offline. But
He's right behind you.
Yeah.
So, and then on here, not identified. How many? There's a substantial number of levies that are not identified in the priority list, correct? That was kind of the big thing when we came up with DLIS, that there was a lot that was not considered.
Right. My understanding is a lot of the islands that are marked as not identified are actually identified in DLIS, but through, like, they were mapped as unnamed or unclaimed islands.
Okay.
So there may be some work we need to do to just sort of sync up anything not identified and take another look at our own system and see
Great.
if those are indeed accounted for. And that's something we can do as part of our report out next month.
Thank you. And I'm just trying to raise awareness of things that I know our residents and folks wanted to raise awareness about before. So that's why I'm just asking those questions. I'll probably have a few more a little later. Thank you.
The fall gathering that we had of DPIIC, and I think you were there for that, Brian, where we talked about prioritization of the levies and the funding and different things, I think is what you were alluding to there. I too am kind of curious about the ongoing funding for the subventions program. Is it possible? I realize that the budget is up to the governor's office and the legislature, but they rely on departments to submit BCPs for things like continuous appropriations and things like that. Is it something that DWR is considering to do a BCP for a continuous appropriation for the subventions, or some way to keep that money in your budget without having to ask for it every single year?
So the BCP process is a confidential process. So I can't say what we will or won't do, but I can say that just programmatically to the department, the subventions program is one of our most important programs and well-received programs in the Delta.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I have one other question. On slide 8, where you've got the flood management expenditures, I realize that a lot of these projects have been years in the planning and the making, and some of this was probably thought of before DLIS became a regulation and we were going with very high and high. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the West Sacramento project, where we're spending 25 million on an other prioritization. It's almost 40% of the total there. And I think it's important for people to understand the scope of that project and kind of like why that decision was made.
Sure. Unfortunately, I don't work for the Division of Flood Management, and I'm not in the organizational chart of these programs, so I don't have a lot of information on them. But what I can say is that with every proposition that's approved, there's very specific language in those propositions that identify which programs and sometimes which projects are able to be funded. And I don't know if this falls into that. But it may very well fall into that. That's just speculation on my part.
Okay, I think it would be helpful for the public who's interested in how we're prioritizing the levies. And this kind of gets back to the DPIIC meeting. And when people look at these and do they believe that we're following the prioritization list? So I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to talk about that, and maybe in future reports we could get, like, if there's something like that where it's kind of a big amount and it doesn't seem to be going with the priorities. I'm sure that there's a good reason, and it would be helpful maybe for the public to understand that a little bit more.
Thank you. Yes, I will make sure that that the Division of Flood Management is aware of that. This is just a presentation on a larger report, and those details may be in there.
Okay.
But I will, Jeff and I will follow up.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that kind of just piggybacks on the whole discussion about the discretionary component of this that allows for discretionary. And I think possibly because we are still kind of inventing this in some way, that's why there was that kind of buffer there. And so I think addressing the kind of going towards that discretionary thing to explain that so that people can better understand. I think that's,
yeah.
Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just taking some notes. Thanks for that feedback. I think we're on B. We just got done with we just got done with the subventions program. Fiscal year 23-24 project proposals. And these would be the major project proposals that the department had. We let a solicitation package out, man, and this is how long it takes sometimes to get the money out the door. But we submitted that. We started working on that in 2022, and we finally went out with solicitations. We got projects back in 23-24, late 23-24. We made recommendations to our director to approve certain projects out of that solicitation. And they were not under contract by July. They're all under contract now, so you'll see all of them next year as well. But we wanted to give you just kind of a preview of what the PSP was, and then we'll give you a preview of what those selected projects were. Nothing was expended, nothing was committed in 23-24, but I just wanted to go over that. So we had a PSP for multi-benefit projects released. The available funding was up to $37 million. And the different categories that we took a look at was DLIS was a very significant aspect of that scoring criteria. Levee improvements, habitat enhancement was a large criteria because these were all intended to be multi-benefit projects. Seismic resiliency and water export, water supply resiliency. And a lot of that kind of stuff kind of lines up with the DLIS requirements as well. We set up our program to have 2 different phases. The first phase would need to be completed before you go to the second phase. And the first phase is planning, design, and permitting. And we gave, spoiler alert, 4 phase 1 grants. And then phase 2 would be after you completed all of the planning, design, and permitting, and you're shovel ready to go to construction, which is the lion's share of that amount. We had 1 project that fit that criteria. And phase 1, just because you get a phase 1 grant does not mean that if you're going to get a phase 2 grant. If there's money available, and you'll see the numbers here in a second, but if there's money available, it's on a first come, first served basis. And we're trying to get, the local reclamation districts to have a little bit of competitive spirit towards them to try to get some of these projects to move along a little bit faster, if at all possible, with the understanding that it's hard to get something done in the Delta. So 4 phase 1 projects and 1 phase 2 project. Next slide, please. So projects proposed and submitted to us. We received 17 different proposals. We were able to select 5 projects based upon the scores that they got through the PSP. And we did not select 12, and here's a list of them. And in another slide, I'll give the rationale for non-selection of some of these projects. But if you have any questions on this list.
It'd be interesting to see what the total ask was on those, just to kind of understand what is the need versus what we can do kind of thing.
That's one of the... it's a following slide. The next reporting requirement is a list of awarded levee improvement projects, funding level, cost shares, priority, and location. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So as I indicated before, we had $37 million total out of Prop 1 and I think a little out of Prop 84 that we have left. These are lists of the phase 1 projects, right? So this is a minor portion, or about 20% of the total project cost. So if you added up all of these 4 projects, the total project costs, they're only phase one, but if they were to come to fruition and be totally built out, the phase one grants that we gave out, $35.6 million is what the total construction would be. Now, not all of these projects are going to be funded and get phase two grants, but some of them will. Some of them will. The phase one project costs, total project costs for the phase one is $4 million. That's for planning, design, and permitting. The phase one cost share for the department, because there's always a, whether it's somewhere between 90%, maybe 85% and 95%. We don't fund anything more than 95%. $3.565 million is the grants that were selected. I think at this point they've all been awarded, and we've got them under contract, but you'll hear about that next year. And then the local cost share for that was $442,000. It's broken up between the different selected projects. We received one phase two project totaling $17.5 million. It's on Twitchell Island. It's a setback levee with waterside habitat. The cost share, because there was a cap, was $15 million. The department and the local cost share would be $2.5 million. Oh, sorry, I'm not keeping up with slides. Next slide, please. This is the phase two construction project. Next slide, please. Here is more details associated with those 4 phase one projects. Give the DLIS priority, the standard, the levy standard that they're hoping to achieve. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the different levy standards out in the Delta, but I do have it as my last slide that we'll end with. It's basically a geometrical trapezoid of the different levies based on the 100-year or 300-year flood event. So this is a description of those projects. Next slide, please. And here's additional details on the Twitchell Island setback levee project. This is actually, I think, 9 reaches all along the San Joaquin that they've broken up into reaches. They chose reach 6 because of levee stability issues in that area as their highest priority. We funded that, or will fund that. Next slide, please. Okay, list of funded projects that are inconsistent with Delta Levy investment strategy priorities. And basically we had one of those projects that was identified on Bolden Island. We gave them a phase 1 grant. The priority is high and not very high. They scored well on the PSP, on the different criteria associated with the PSP. Basically for habitat benefits, they scored higher on habitat benefits than the other projects did. So, next slide. Say that again. Oh, back one slide, please. F is the next reporting requirement, a summary of DWR's rationale for levy improvement projects proposals submitted but not awarded funding during that reporting year. And here are all of the projects that were not selected. Next slide, please. Sorry. These are the projects that you saw earlier that were not selected. Next slide. And again, the rationale was, limited funds, unlimited need. The sum of all those projects, $135 million. We had $37 million. And it's expensive to develop these proposals. If they know that there's limited funds and not unlimited money, then they choose their highest, their one that they think they have the best chance at. This $135 million, we just got done doing a 5-year planning process where all of the different reclamation districts in the Delta came up with what is their 10-year need. We came up with about $1.5 billion worth of need. So $135 million is what they felt with. Oh, I should have.
But that's what I was trying to kind of help raise awareness about, is that, we're only being given so much, and there's definitely more need.
Yeah, there is a $1.5 billion need at least, and we have the ability, Prop 4 gives us $150 million to spend on subventions and project improvements. So how we're going to divvy, and that's going to have to be divvied up, right? So
that's a limited amount of time of that money. It's not an ongoing.
I think, yeah, well, it's, I don't know if there's a sunset date in Prop 4 like there has been in others, like 1E had a sunset date.
I think there is, but
is there? I'm not as familiar with that, so.
Member Baranian?
Yes, I have a question, and, understood the magnitude of the work and the need and what's available. Are there any, and you talked about grants, and then are there any form of like local sources that can come in as like in form of matching fund, or, just because the local view of the world could be very different from this global view, and then feeling where the priorities are, could there be a vehicle for local funding of some sort?
Yeah, so just reclamation districts in general charge landowners assessments, and that's their revenue stream. And the assessments come from the local, whoever owns land on there, and there's different rates, and each reclamation district has a different budget and budget needs that they identify every year in their budget planning process. It could be, but there's also, and we're going through this, the department owns a couple of islands. Prop 218 is a big thing where your assessments can only be a certain amount without going to the voters on, that are be affected by that. So there's a lot of considerations. I would say they're starting, the local agencies, the local reclamation districts are starting to go through Prop 218 process to increase their rates, but a lot of them are still operating on budgets that were approved, back in 1985, 1990, that long ago. And they can't really increase their budgets without going through that process. And inflation has increased, PG&E bills, which pumping and electricity consumption is a big part of that. That is all going up. So the reclamation districts are really strapped.
And a lot of these communities are not wealthy communities. Some of these reclamation districts are one owner as well. And so it puts a huge burden on them. But even when it's distributed, the costs are very high. And to distribute that cost, even amongst when there's a lot of people, it's still a lot of money. And then you're dealing with renters sometimes. There's just a lot of that burden is very high on those, and so even that that extra, coming up with the 10% is still a struggle.
Thank you. Okay, we're running just a little bit behind, so and I think we want to go ahead and just move on.
Yeah. Next slide, please. Looks like, there we go. We're down to the last one, summary and location of all funded levee improvement projects which were completed in 23-24. We had one, next slide, please, on Bethel Island from stations 00 to 130, and then again from 340 to 450. As fill placement to improve the levee to bulletin 19282. It improved existing tow drains, which gets water off of the levee, which is very important. It provided shaded riverine aquatic habitat and lowland habitat with native plant species. It was selected in 2016, awarded funding in 17-18, and finally completed for the tune of $10.4 million. Next slide. Questions and answers, and then the next slide, which is a schematic of the different levee standards. So you can keep that posted on your wall.
Before we go to questions, I just wanted to indicate, now that we've received this report and details for Bethel Island, the project, that I think it's important to recognize that last criteria is a finished project that has been going through years of different like when we get these reports over time, we're going to learn about projects at the planning stage, and we're going to follow them through, and eventually they're going to reach that stage where Bethel is as a completed project. So now what we do is we take the information about that completed project and we plug it into our risk-based model, and we say, how does that potentially change the risk to all the rest of the islands based on the investment in Bethel? And that's information that we'll be bringing to the May meeting to present our staff's analysis on that Bethel Island improvement and how it impacts the rest of the system. And now I'd like to open it up to questions, Madam Chair.
Yes, Diane.
I just look forward to the report, and I also look forward to the feedback on, this report and if it's meeting the expectations, and also, probably how we need to adjust those expectations, because we're learning as we go. So, thank you.
Yeah, and when we talk about it at our May meeting, I think it would be helpful to understand how that prioritization list might get updated, and if and when it does. It's all part of kind of what you guys are going to talk about. So really looking forward to that. All right, any other questions from members? No? All right, any public comments?
None here.
No, Madam Chair.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Brian. And thank you for all of your service. And we're going to miss having your updates. But as I mentioned before, we have these monthly meetings. So you're welcome to come back. We'll get off your boat or whatever you're going to be doing and come visit us. Yes. All right, next up, we have another group from, well, not a group, sorry, Carrie, a person from the Department of Water Resources for an update on the Delta Conveyance Project. So welcome Carrie Buckman, the Environmental Project Manager for the Delta Conveyance Project.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Closer? Okay. All right. I'm happy to be here talking to you for my regular quarterly update, and it's a really great location, so it's a fun one to come to today. So I think we can pull up my slides. I have a brief presentation, really just a status update of where we are with Delta Conveyance. If we go to the next slide, I'm going to talk first about Community Benefits Program and where we are with the program, just a general permitting update. And then because the water rights process is really the main activity we have going on, I'm just going to give a little bit more of an overview of the process and where we're going and what's coming up, so you kind of have a sense of where that is. So we can go ahead to the next slide, please. So just as a quick reminder about the Community Benefits Program, it has a number of key components. It has a Delta Community Fund, which is an overarching fund to support community prioritized projects in the Delta. It also has economic development components like local hiring targets and job training, and then potentially integrated benefits, what we sometimes refer to as leave behinds, where there could be parts of the project that the community would like to remain, say a park and ride, and we would work on that with the community. So if we go to the next slide, the latest step on this is that we issued a draft implementation plan and guidelines. And the idea of this, and I think we've talked about it before, was really to try to generate comments. That it's hard to really think about some of these details in the abstract. So having something to respond to, we thought might be helpful. So this included things like, how do we structure the different components of the program? How do we schedule grant solicitations? How do we identify integrated benefits with the community? And how do we develop community benefit agreements? And it also had some ideas for how to screen and score grant proposals for eligibility and prioritization. So we released this in October of 2024, and we tried to give it a pretty long comment period, during which time we did have people doing outreach. So we had people going and tabling at different events in the Delta to try to collect additional comments. So we did receive comments. So next slide, please. We got 34 comments on a feedback form that we posted, and then one additional letter. And we're working now to address those comments and incorporate them into a revised set of guidelines and a revised implementation plan. So some sort of key or recurring comments. There was a desire for continued input and more involvement by Delta residents. There's an interest in safeguards and transparency on how program funds are managed. A desire to maintain low overhead for program costs. And I'd say some general confusion about the relationship of the program to mitigation and the ombudsperson program. Those are all interrelated in some way, and people seem to be a bit confused about how they worked together. So we're taking all of this and working on how to revise it, but just to give you some information about what kinds of comments we received. Next slide, please. So overall, we are working through a number of permitting processes. Since I was last here, we did receive our incidental take permit under the California Endangered Species Act. We received that in February on the 14th. On the federal side for the Endangered Species Act, the operations are covered at a programmatic level within the long-term operations biological opinions, the long-term operations of the CVP and SWP. And then we are also working on construction-related biological opinions, and we expect those around the middle of this year. For water rights, this is, as I mentioned, really the main activity going on right now. That is a change in point of diversion hearing. And I'll talk about that more next, but it is ongoing. The dates right now are between March and October 25th or 2025, and we know that there will likely be more dates added after that. Delta plan consistency, as you know, we did receive the determination from you that the geotechnical activities were not a covered action, and that we are still looking at submitting our certification in 2025, later this year. And because of court processes, we are currently paused on our geotechnical activities. So that is not going forward at the moment. Next slide, please. So I wanted to dive a little deeper into the change in point of diversion. So just as a reminder, the State Water Project has a water right, and we are trying to add 2 new points of diversion to that water right. We are not trying to increase the upper limit of that water right, but rather add to the diversion locations. So if we were able to move this forward, our water right would be amended to allow the diversion of water from the DCP intakes in the North Delta. And other permits and approvals would still be required for the Delta Conveyance project. This is just one component. So this is a parallel process to things like the California Endangered Species Act and Federal Endangered Species Act. Next slide, please. We get a lot of questions about how this relates to the work that the state board is doing to update the Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan. And it is a separate regulatory process to update that plan. They are working on that as a separate process. This is a hearing that is not the same piece. But we know as part of the Delta Conveyance project that we are going to have to comply with whatever regulatory framework is in place. We're looking at a project that would not be fully operational until about 2044 and has a lifespan of about 100 years. And we're fully aware that during that time, regulations are going to change probably multiple times. So we know that we will comply with the regulations that are in place and whatever updated water quality control plan framework we would need to comply with. So in the meantime, we have done a little bit of sensitivity analysis and really been looking at the idea that the potential impacts of the Delta Conveyance project don't really change. It's just the baseline upon which it's operating. Next slide, please. So the state board has to consider two key questions when determining if they're going to grant DWR's petition. So they need to determine that the petition would not cause injury to a legal user of water, including other water rights holders, and it would not cause unreasonable impacts to fish and wildlife. So we are working now to explain to the state board why we do not think it would cause those things. So next slide, please. So there's a pretty involved process, I'd say, to go through the water rights hearing process. So it started with pre-hearing conferences. We had 4 of them. And then policy statements. We had dates in February, another date in March that was interrupted by a hacking attack. And then we have another date now scheduled in May 19th. Policy statements are not evidentiary, but are part of setting the policy reasons that we are bringing the project. So really policy considerations related to the hearing. We then gave our opening statement, and we are now currently making our case in chief. So the way this works is that we are putting out panels with testimony and backing up that with evidence. And then the protestants are able to cross-examine those witnesses as part of the hearing. So we are also providing supplemental information at the end of May. This is some information that was requested by the administrative hearing officer about DWR water diversions, and that will be discussed in June, on June 10th and 11th. So there are remaining policy statements coming on May 19th. And after all of this, the protestants then will have to make their case in chief. And that starts with them submitting information on July 11th. And then we have hearing dates for that starting in August, at which time they will do their presentation and we will cross-examine their witnesses. So after all of that, there may be rebuttal and surrebuttal, but at this point, those are the pieces that are defined. Next slide, please. So then the state board will go through a process to make a decision. So this hearing is the first step. They will then issue a draft decision and prepare permits in an order, meet with the hearing officer to review the decision in order, revise as appropriate, discuss in a board closed session, and then have a workshop to discuss the draft order, which is optional, but this is a big project, so I would expect it. That would then be considered at a board meeting and issued by the board, approving or denying the petition. And then that decision would be adopted. So there is, it's a process. So I just wanted to kind of walk through it because it is pretty involved. So if you want to go to the next slide, the AHO has a website that has all of the different hearing notices. If you want to take a look at the hearing dates or some of the issues that she has outlined that need to be covered in the hearing. And we are also posting regular updates on our website just because it's a lot to sit through. It's long days and a lot of testimony. So there are some updates that you can take a look at if you're interested in seeing how it's going. And with that, I think we can move to the next slide, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there's time.
All right, thanks, Carrie. That was a great update. Does anyone have any questions for Carrie? Yes, Diane Burgess.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi.
Okay, so on the community, benefits program, I keep saying it, so it feels like you're putting the cart before the horse. You know, this is way out if it happens. And as you know, I've said in the past, what was determined would be possibly a community benefit 5 years ago probably has changed, and probably will change in another 5 years and 10 years. So I appreciate the effort, but I also really am cautious about, you know, making specific ideas of what it will be. And I see you nodding, so I One of the things that I've heard though is that DWR has discussed the Dutch Slough project as being possibly an integrated benefit. Is that correct?
I would not call it an integrated benefit. So we have been having some discussions with entities that might be interested in having community benefits agreements. It's not, we're still trying to figure out what that might look like. I know that we are considering something there. It would not be an integrated benefit. It would be a community benefits agreement, but we don't have the details of that worked out. So I'm not sure if that will be moving forward or not.
Yeah, I just have a concern because that's a project that's been built for 20 years and with a lot of state money. And so I have real concerns about that. The other thing is you were talking about CPOD, and it says that the hearing dates are currently set from March through October. Does that mean that everything would be completed as I understand? And I don't mean to put anybody in, but it was my understanding that this all needed to be, it was an expectation that this should all be completed before it comes before the Stewardship Council. So are you anticipating that?
So the hearing dates that have been set are to go through DWR's case in chief and the protestants' case in chief, and that will finish in October. At that point, the remaining dates that will be necessary are still, I'd say, a little unclear if there will be any and how long it will go. So I think we need a little bit more time to finish that. And I think, as we've talked before, it's certainly staff recommendation from the DSC that we finish that process before we submit our certification of consistency, and we'll take that under consideration. But there are a lot of considerations on the project for timing. And so I don't know that I know that right now, especially with the current ruling from the geotechnical litigation. We're still sort of trying to figure out how to move forward with all of that. So I'm not sure yet. I guess the answer.
And then the only other question I have is there's been some speculation that the governor has been working with the president on maybe trying to do some moving along of things. The look on your face is like, really? So maybe that's just speculation.
It's speculation.
So we don't see anything. I just, so we don't, I love the look on your face. You don't see things moving along any faster at this point.
I don't see any action at that kind of level. So,
Okay.
But.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions for Carrie? I just have a couple of quick ones. Can you remind us of kind of the general amount of money that you guys are thinking about for the community benefits program? I feel like it was mentioned before and I just can't recall.
It's $200 million.
Okay, sounds good. And then I just want to make sure that I heard you right on the change in point of diversion, that you've submitted for a change in 2 locations, but not in a total amount of the water that you're diverting. Is that-
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, any other questions for Carrie? No? All right. Do we have any public comment, Emma?
Oh, Member Zingali has his hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dan. I didn't see you there.
No problem. No public comment here, but I just really wanted to thank you, Carrie, for the continuity of your checking in with us regularly. It helps to have you consistently at the table, and there's a continuing narrative that we can follow. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I really appreciate you coming down here today. It was a struggle, I'm sure, to drive to beautiful Clarksburg.
I'm happy to. This is a nice one.
Yeah, it is a nice one. We'll be back. All right, with that, we're going to conclude that agenda item. And our last one is our preparation.
Madam Chair.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. Is there a
I'm
public
just
comment?
making sure.
Oh.
Because I didn't officially.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Doesn't look like there is. No
Okay.
public comment.
All right, sorry. I guess I thought I asked. So our last agenda item is preparation for the next council meeting. That will take place on May 22nd. We will be back at the CNRA building, so please refer to the posted meeting notice for further information or updates. And with that, we will conclude our meeting. Thank you all for being here.